what would be the factors that would speed up the connections among the critical mass? I'd like to just put forward some ideas. First, I think it is essential for us to be attracted at a sufficiently global scale that we have a vision of a preferred world to be attracted toward. That's why I think that this has such a genius to it, a planetary initiative for the world we choose. And I'd like to very briefly give you an image that has been coming to me over the last 15 or 20 years of that world. Now, it's a world not just moving to a historical change, it's moving to an evolutionary change. That's my belief. And let's look at that for a minute, because if I'm right, and if I'm right that it is imprinted in the human consciousness to know this already, and that the religions of the world who have reached the masses of humanity have already imprinted this, we're templated to know it, it means that one of the keys to collecting the critical mass is a vision as dynamic as that is inherent in the religions of the world. It's almost like a revival of the spiritual at the level of evolution, by saying it's real. Because when you say it's real, that we're going to be transformed, it touches the transcendent nerve. And the transcendent nerve in each of us is so powerful that it's irresistible when it's touched. And I believe the tremendous popularity of the science fiction movies tells us something. There's a craving for the transcendent, but we're getting it in very narrow ways. We're basically getting it from science fiction movies and fundamentalism. And that cannot be the broadest way to reach the most people with a vision of transcendence. It's very unfortunate that liberals and nice people don't allow themselves to believe in the reality of the quantum leap, leaving it to people who have narrow orthodoxies who do believe in it, whether it be Islam fundamentalism or Christian fundamentalism or any of those narrow orthodoxies. The reason they're popular is they've got a glimmer of truth in them that is more truthful, I believe, than secular humanism, which is very disappointing. When you really say, what will it be like when everything works in secular humanism, you end up bored to death. And enough of us have been bored to death to know that there's got to be something more to excite. And, a bored species will never make it. There's got to be the nerve that excites. Now, what has excited me, having come from an agnostic background and never having gotten an ordinary religious training, which is probably all to the good, because I came at it with sort of a spiritual tabula rasa. I never got imprinted with a traditional religious pattern. I discovered, by spending 15 years studying evolution, that what religions were talking about is the next stage of evolution. But they talk about it in pre-scientific and somewhat mythical terms, and we can begin to talk about it in evolutionary systems transformation terms. But it's the same thing. And the glory of it is that instead of feeling like a small band of isolated New Age, far out, fringe people, I think we're sitting on the great mountain of human spirituality, which is the masses of humanity knows this already. It's the intellectuals who forgot it. And particularly in recent times, the intellectuals completely negated, almost with a viciousness sometimes, the aspiration for total transformation that's in every human heart. All right, let's just take a look at what that vision might be in evolutionary terms, equating it and translating it into the various spiritual terms of the various cultures of the world. I'm going to do it in evolutionary language, but hold it and translate it, and we need to find out how to translate it into all the cultures of the world. What are the characteristics that we now know the human race has, which, if activated, would lead to a quantum shift? The first quality that we know we have, because we've seen examples of it, is a higher state of consciousness itself. We have seen individuals who are in God-centered consciousness. We have seen that evolution is a consciousness-raising experience. We have seen that within each of us there seems to be an activation at the inner plane. I'm assuming that whole-centered consciousness will rapidly become a new norm. And just as self-consciousness was new 2 to 3 million years ago, cosmic consciousness was new 5,000 or 6,000 years ago and will be established as a new norm, and we will find that self-centered consciousness has become non-viable and will become extinct. It's as extinct as the mastodon. Because when you really look at it, there is no way, if we are to evolve at all, that we could evolve as self-centered beings with all this power. Because it's not just nuclear power. You know, they'll tell you, if you talk to people in the army, that nuclear power is no longer the threat that the early mystics had. Co-creative consciousness would be a consciousness in which the individual is attuning from within to the patterns in the process of evolution. And through science, through a matured science, is observing the processes of creation from without, and through technology, co-creating consciously with them. That's really touching the tree of life. If you can imagine us doing that, intuiting the patterns which are leading to ever more complex wholes, with the power that we're at the very, very threshold of through understanding nature, you see that people like Jesus were right. We shall do the works that he did and even greater works. That's the design. It's right there. Now, let's look at our capacity in the space program. And whenever I mention the space program to New Age groups, I lose at least 3/4 of the group. Why are you bringing that up, Barbara? Well, I'd like you to bear with me. What I think has happened in the space program is as important as the fish coming out of the sea onto the dry land. Now, I know there were some fish who didn't think it was important. I'm sure there were a few. When I saw, and this is really funny thinking of what I'm going to do, but when I saw John Glenn go off in space in 1962 on television, I had a cosmic birth experience, and I called it a cosmic ejaculation. Now wait till I tell John Glenn. Now that he's running for president, it's really funny. But I saw that what was happening, and we happened to be witnessing a shift in physical evolution, which meant that the human race was being given through its high technologies, of which space is only one, the astronautics is only one component, the capacity to have technologies equal to our consciousness. And when you combine high consciousness with high technology, and I'm not speaking now of belching steel factories and Cadillacs, I'm speaking of ephemeralized microchips and exquisite solar sails and magnificent communication systems, of which we're also just at the beginning. If you fuse in your mind cosmic consciousness and ephemeralized evolutionary technologies, what you see is that we are going to be, and in fact are in the process of becoming, a physical universal species which complements our cosmic consciousness. And that if we get through this period, we shall be genuinely a universal species. I see a vision of the earth being restored as the center of nature and culture for the human race. And I see not crude technologies in space, but ephemeralized technologies. We are becoming extraterrestrials. I'm not going to pursue that vision, but you can see it leads to the unknown. It doesn't lead to more of the same. Now add the biological revolution to this equation. It's fascinating that genetics, astronautics, cybernetics, all came in the same generation. People like John Platt and others have said, this is a complex of organic capabilities that would be lethal in a biosphere and natural in the universe. Because the handwriting on the wall in the biological revolution is that we understand our own DNA and our own mind-body system and are going to be able to change it. You know, people shy away from this truth because it seems as though it's against the will of God. And there's a whole big controversy now, clergy against biotechnology. Well, I once wrote to the Pope and said, "Dear Father, have you ever thought that the founder of the Christian religion manifested the most radical body transformation in the history of the world?" Literally, I'm assuming that we're getting biotechnology at the same time that we're getting astronautics, and at the same time that we're getting cybernetics, and at the same time that we're normalizing cosmic consciousness, because we are truly destined to be co-creative with God. Who ever thought that this particular model of a body is it forever? A little mammalian furry body? It forever? You know, sometimes I notice my body and has a little fur, little fangs. You notice? And ears still slightly pointed. We are spiritual beings still in animal bodies. And it always struck me as weird. Strange that would, you know, I used to look at it and think, well, it won't be this way forever. Because the physical world changes too. This is another thing that the New Age has tended to ignore. It sees us returning to something, and it sees us in cosmic consciousness, but it doesn't realize that we're going to really build new bodies. Because that's what we always do. That's what nature always does when it hits a limit. It builds new bodies. So through the biological revolution, it looks to me like we're going to gain access to our own body design. We're going to have the choice to extend our lives, to become self-healing, self-regenerating, eventually self-transforming beings, and we're also going to be able to choose to die. You can see we're beginning to do that. People are saying, I don't want to go on. Medical technology might extend my life, but I choose to die gracefully. Other people are going to choose to extend. We're just at the beginning of it. Projected 20 to 50 years in a cosmic environment, in cosmic consciousness, you begin to see that we are no longer going to be creature mammalian humans. Now, this is written up in Time magazine. It's on the front page of World News World News Report. I can't remember. They did a big issue on it, the 50th anniversary, and it's all in there, but it's not related up to anything. It's just like a group of oddities that we can do, and I'm putting an evolutionary perspective on it. So I assume we will be in co-creative consciousness in a universal environment, gaining access to our own mind-body system. Then let's add into the mix the whole communications revolution. And at the growing edge of that, what we see is an extended nervous system for the body politic. We see all unchosen work no longer has to be done by humans. We see we have extended capacities in the universe that we can send out as our eyes and ears and hands beyond us. John Platt says that this combination if you combine it with our capacity to do systems design, like the Apollo program, our capacity for collective evolutionary thought is as great as the origin of thought itself, when you piece it all together. Now, and the amazing thing to me is all of this we're already doing. I haven't mentioned a thing that isn't happening. Now add to this what we've learned about the unique individual human potential. And Margaret Mead's famous quote, I don't know where she thought it up, but she said, we've only used 5 to 10% of our potential. It has been said by her, it's been said by many others. That means 90% of our potential is untapped. Well, when you look at it, what would that mean? It looks to me like the creature-human phase was basically the phase of reproduction, maintenance, and survival. And most of us did not have to activate much over and beyond the effort to survive. We didn't have the time, the energy, or the capabilities. Now, in those countries where people don't have to work 18 hours a day to survive and have 10 babies, what's happening is this enormous human potential is being liberated. What's happening with women is that their whole species role is changing from maximum reproduction. And there's this feminine energy being let loose upon the world. There's and there's no model for it. I mean, a woman of my age with this amount of energy is socially unacceptable. As my partner over the Ram Dass frequently points out to me. And I think Don will put us one evening and the next for good reason. Because he keeps me down long enough to really catch hold of some of these things.